Hello, it's Friday, and you guys get to spend the next hour and a half with yours truly. You guys are so blessed. Like, I'm actually a little jealous that I can't be out there with all of you tuning in to watch all of this. This is, of course, Fawks Talks, the only show on the Fable 42 Network over to all the other shows on the Fable 42 Network, where we build community through friendship, gaming, and chaos. I'm your host, Ronan Fox. With me, as always, is Cody. Say hello, Cody.
Hello, everybody.
Perfect. And if you're new to the show, this is basically, hello and welcome. Basically, we take a factual look back at the week, and it's a silly show. It's like 10% facts, 60% theory, 70% puns, the 100% made up statistics. Tonight, we'll take a look at Vault 42 as Wastelanders explore the shed and perform loot acts on a bug hive. Then we'll look at how the group on Legends of Shoggoth handle a routine traffic stop. And lastly, we'll see what happens when you drop Mentos into your bottled emotions on Realms of Ukador. But before all of that, let's get into some sponsors and announcements. First up is Griffin Co. So all of our 3D printed things on all of those campaigns is brought to you by Griffin Co. So shout out to them. And then we are Vorpal powered. So all of our audio, digital displays, digital dice, all that sort of stuff, player indicators is all through Vorpal board. But I was just thinking, I never get to use any of the cool features on this, so I'm going to make a new segment that we're starting right now. Sure. It's going to be called 11 or Higher, and I'm going to roll a D20 just so I can roll. Oh, God, I rolled 10 of them. Hold on. Ignore all that. Close that. All right. We'll do 11 or Higher. 11 or Higher, we'll sort of predict something that's going to happen the next week on the network. This week, though, we'll just do one for this show. So 11 or higher, the show is going to be the best one ever. See, look at that. Perfect. The dice have spoken, and it's fun to roll stuff. Okay. Anyway, some other mentions. We are on Patreon. We are on Ko-Fi. All of the benefits, all of the things that you guys would be helping us with, all the benefits that you guys get, all that information can be found down below. We do have all of our streams are on VOD. They're on Twitch, but they're also on YouTube. We're trying to get people to go to our YouTube, do the YouTube thing, like, subscribe, comment, all of those things on YouTube. And I think they're up 2 days after the stream. And then we have our shop, which is up on our website. So all of our merch is available through that. I think that's it. So, okay, with that, I still have no idea what I'm doing. You have nothing better to do, so let's start some Fawks Talks. Cody, hit me with that intro.
Copy that.
Are you waiting for me?
No, I'm just waiting for it to come back.
It's only a 10-second intro, right?
Oh my God, are we already back?
Okay. 10 seconds.
I think it's time to take a drink. All right, listen. I love that intro. Okay, it's my favorite. It's like the smell of gasoline, right? So I should hate it, but I don't. All right, so anyway, what's going on with the Fable 42 universe? Well, first off, big announcement. We got Wizards following this show, so that's super exciting. Utahime just told me who's on it. I can't remember, but I know Jordan's on there and Taryn's on there, and so Rook and Hemian are on there from Frostguard, and that's really all you need to know to be hyped about it, because those are the only cool people on the show.
We'll make sure to let Anna know about that.
Oh! And Anna. Okay, so
She's gonna need some sunglasses for that one.
We're gonna move right on. Okay. No, don't be. Okay, so what else do we have this week? We got, is this a River Break and Adventures in Middle-earth week, correct?
Correct.
I believe it is. Yep, so we got that this weekend. So River Break on Saturday, Adventures of Middle-earth on Sunday. So be sure to check those out. Saturday is before Vault. And lastly, I think I'll announce this a couple of times just to give everybody a plenty of notice. Just as a channel update, we will be dark the week of Christmas, which is coming up fast. So, yeah. Cody, where are you at with your Christmas stuff? Do you do a lot of Christmas shopping?
Yeah, we fortunately enough do most of ours for the Black Friday online sales and then Cyber Monday for all the kids.
Yes, I have one kid who is wanting something that everybody wants, and that's been fun. He didn't want it when it first came out, and now that it's nowhere to be found, he wants it. So
Yeah, those are the tough ones because you never know until they tell you they're sold out.
Yep. And so we've been doing that whole thing, just watching it online and not being able to find it. So it's been lovely. 2 disease. Okay, so with that, let's get into the show. I am going to start by saying that Honkers may be a beloved Realms character, but in real life, they're an asshole. So regardless, though, tonight we do have our first sort of vault-focused episode. So we have our guests. First up is Alicia Marie, who plays Tipper, the Sith Artificer. And then we have Utahime, who plays Tipper's best friend, Ash, the super mutant barbarian. And with that, as you all know, when it comes to a Fable 42 campaign, the choice was theirs. So let's start running the recap and see how they did. Okay, so I'm going to take a drink real fast. First up is going to be Vault 42. They're on episode 3, and it's called 5 Mile Farm. So after having the almost fatal run-in with some stingwings, our adventurers search the abandoned shack. But first, Tipper wants to speak with Ash, who is surprisingly pissed off by this. And I mean surprising in the same way as it would be seeing me without sleeves. Tipper is upset that Ash killed her creations. Ash is angry that robots exist. And based on this conversation, though, I think she actually hates Tipper the same, if not more than robots. So, oh boy, are we in for a treat when she figures that all out. Ash moves on quickly, I should say, and goes to examine the shack. Ash takes out her aggression on some poor larvae. The larvae die, but her anger does not. She then goes to, and I'm quoting April, whack off the hive. She learns that it has to be whacked off several times to finish it off. So in addition to the hive's girth, its stamina was also mighty impressive. Tipper and Marcus want to go look at the water in the nearby horse trough. Turns out it's glowing. While tempting, you have to be careful because drinking green glowing water will have you dancing in the middle of Walmart with who you think is Charlize Theron, but is actually a guy named Charlie Dameron who works in the lawn and garden. Man, my high school reunion got weird. Anyways, while approaching the watering trough, Marcus begins to feel ill, but Tipper does not. Tipper begins to experiment with the water by throwing rocks and small insects into the irradiated water while Marcus keeps watch. Meanwhile, Petra and Clay search through the crates and barrels for loot. They find potatoes. This is a thrilling find, but not because it's the wasteland, but because in addition to the sweat salt, they'll now get to try Clay's world-famous armpit butter. That's harder to say than I thought it was going to be. Anyway, they also find an old newspaper. The paper talks about FableCon 2077. Presumably, this is where the now archaic Solo announces the never-ending dungeon crawl, where he'll just continue to DM until he keels over and dies. It's called A Solo Journey to the Beyond. Not to mention, there was no mention of Fawks Talks, though, so that's kind of fun. Anyways, Ash eventually leaves the shack, disheveled after her intimate time getting handy with the hive. She makes her way over to the horse trough. Marcus warns Tipper of the approaching ash hole, and Tipper tries to feign being unwell due to the radiation by overreacting to the point that I was reminded of my 10th grade girlfriend who burnt all of my possessions to prove she wasn't crazy. After all this, it's decided that they'll take a short rest. Marcus in particular is in dire need of a rest because unlike his package, he's been seriously worked over. They decide to go to the shack and sleep a bit. I'm sure all the blood and guts created the cozy ambience of a Bates motel. It should be noted that Petra doesn't go in. which is probably the first time she's declined going into a random shack to lie down with a group of people. After a short rest, the team hits the road and travels for a bit. But eventually, night falls once again on the Radiated Skies, which I believe is the name of mine and Taryn's band that will be playing soon. Hashtag Radiated Skies. They take shelter at what's left of an old farmhouse. Ash starts a fire, presumably using only her burning rage, and she finds a watering hole. And having experience with the hive, starts a pumping, and voila, it starts a spurting. Tipper asks Marcus when to use her purified food and water. And it's at this point that I start to feel sorry for Tipper. Think about it. These are the people: the walking punching bag, the promiscuous butcher, the samurai chef, and the asshole. These are the people that she has to use to try to figure out how to be a normal human. Anyways, the group beds down. Petra cozies up to Clay, who remains oddly stoic and steadfast this night, almost like he wasn't even there. Ash takes first watch. Tipper takes this time to have a conversation, to which I'm sure Ash was thrilled about. Like realizing instead of going to Disney World, it turns out you need an emergency root canal. Tipper asks Ash why she hates robots, and in turn she threatens Tipper that she talks too much. And I smell a new rule on the horizon. In the end, however, Ash and Tipper have a small, very small, bonding moment during the watch. And during the shift exchange, Marcus has strong words with Ash, flaking on her watch responsibilities, and then quickly learns that Ash has not yet fallen asleep. He backpedaled so fast he looked like he was going in reverse. But every guy's been in this exact situation before. Your brain hijacks your mouth and forces out some bullshit, and you have no other choice but to grovel your way out of it. In the end, though, they have some fun banter before Ash, passes out for the night, and Marcus tucks his secret synth buddy in for a shutdown. The next morning, they all awake refreshed. Petra watches Clay grind out his sword, which is strangely not a euphemism. On the road again, headed to the farm, the group comes upon a rad stag, which Ash and Petra stalk. Ash approaches and beats the meat. Seriously, I can't make it up. Petra gets excited as the pair are bonding over butchering, which sounds like the memoir of someone on death row. Ash takes its head after Petra butchers the beast in 12 minutes flat, all while ignoring the blood covering her tiny frame. She wraps the meat in an old newspaper, and the group continue down the road. Petra presumes her and Ash are now friends, but Ash summons her inner Thagan and states, "I wouldn't go that far." And if you watch Wizards, you'll understand just how poetic that was. Eventually, as they continue, an old farmhouse can be seen far off in the distance. Down the road, and there's a sign above it that says 5 Mile Farm. And in a meta note, the group is unsure of the history of the name. It is as obvious as it sounds, and apparently unoriginal, as there are at least 3 5 Mile Farms in the state of Texas alone. One in Austin, Somerville, and another in Snook. And I have no idea why I looked that up. Anywho, they begin down the path, and Ash gets blown up a bit by a mine while Petra dodges another. Marcus, who you'll remember, had checked outside of a tavern for these, assumes, I guess, that the wide open farmland was free of such common city hazards. As they get closer, though, they can more clearly see a white open farmland. They see the white farmhouse, and that there's turrets activated. And as they approach, an older woman wielding a shotgun and a sniper rifle on her back, along with a large dog, appear from the inside of the home. This woman's decked out like your weird friend that is currently prepping for the totally real zombie apocalypse that's about to happen. This weirdo turns out to be Hannah, who naturally tells them to stop and they've come close enough. And that is where we are with vaults. So, will you light them up with some new fun holes, or will they add another crazy person to the mix? That is a question for tomorrow. So you can find out on the next episode, which is tomorrow evening. It's good stuff, man. It's really interesting, and it's going to be fun to talk about that later on. Okay, so next up is Legends of Shao Gal, episode 7. Roads unite. United. Yep. There's a D there. All right, so this group, now all out on their first quest, have been traveling eastward for about 2 days before they noticed the first barrier on their journey, both literally and figuratively. The road was blocked. The blockade was set up by orcs, who clearly drew the short end of the stick and are forced to do road patrol in this frozen area. It was probably punishment for that time Grumog, the reckless maverick, was passed up again for the promotion and decided to go on a magic powder bender with that wizard from the dark part of town. I have no idea if that's true. I just felt like these orcs needed a bit of motivation for being out there. Almost everyone scattered to either side of the road, into the trees or to the Rex, up onto a rock for a better look at the roadblock and see who was nearby. Frizz stayed behind with the horse. Oscar, failing to notice Rex sneak away, moved towards the roadblock block to scan the area and try to find Rex and the others. He was the only sensible one in the group and at least tried to communicate with the orcs prior to assaulting them because they had a shitty job. The orcs responded out in an unknown language, concerned with the automaton coming towards them, as one would. Rex took the time to cast Comprehend Languages to try to understand them, and Matas enough closer to the roadblock to potentially have an advantage on the attack if it came to that, which of course it was going to. And eventually Oscar spotted all of his friends in hiding and gave away all of their positions, like that one annoying ass coworker that can't understand social cues and the fact that you don't give a shit about their cast roll, you just need to go to the bathroom. The orcs became alert and one of them spotted Mata, naturally. At this point, there is some discussion, and by discussion, I mean extortion. The orcs demanded payment to pass. I'd like to think they were just trying to raise money for Grumog's fines, which were pretty hefty in the sum of 500 gold. Jinx tries to barter using the old herb deal, like the old high school oregano trick, and these bitch-ass freshman orcs fell for it. To try and sweeten the pot, Daffodil tries to sell them on a free performance. But either way, the battle ensues, surprisingly, before she has a chance to sing. The orc chief crushes the vial, clearly a party foul, and took a first swing at Terran. Nope, not Terran, Jinx. Daffodil goes full Hemian and casts Necrotic Energy, using a Haunting Limerick. But less badass, scares the shit out of herself, causing her to run away. Frizz spends the majority of the battle talking with the horse, and I think once the rest of the party inevitably dies, there absolutely needs to be a spinoff. Frizz called the horse Toby, but this is obviously wrong, as the spinoff would be called Frizz and Sprocket. During combat, Rex decided to carve into a rock and make it look like an ancient Xyloc dynasty artifact of the Raven Queen. Using some light magic and a commanding performance, he managed to convince the orcs that this was a real Raven Queen artifact and halted their attacks. Malta used this opportunity to try and intimidate the orcs, which probably looked like what I would imagine the arguments between my wife and I look like. You might laugh, but she's 5 feet of fury and that shit is terrifying. Jinx eventually shifts into her more feral form, which I'd like to picture as like when your cat arches their back and does that weird like hoppy thing. She'll eventually go crazy on an orc, partially for revenge, but moreover, I think to show off for Rex. More on that in a minute. She'll continue this hit and run style throughout the fight, which is the most cat thing ever. Destroy some shit and then just stand there staring at you like, what, motherfucker? This continues for several rounds as the orcs are frozen in suspicion, not wanting to upset the Raven Queen. As the person who is holier than thou and wants to be a god lies out his ass. Apparently, thou shalt produce false idols to deceive the stupid. Even as the orcs, though, start to realize what is happening, Rex continues the charade. And I'm not even mad, though, because the first rule of entertainment is commit to the bit. Eventually, Frizz came into the fray and blasted one of the orcs with one of his inventions, and him, with the help of Mata, brought one of the orcs down. This, however, got the attention of the others, and the combat picked back up, sort of. Daffodil showed off some new spooky attacks this time, and at one point she tries to send a crackling beam of energy towards one of the orcs, but it just fizzles out and dribbles into nothing, which is okay because I've heard that happens to everyone, right? Okay, eventually all but 2 orcs went down. Rex bonked them into unconsciousness, which is not a euphemism, and that's a bummer because that would have been a very interesting turn in that story. He uses the light spell on the chief, making him a beacon of the Raven Queen's light. Rex is a forgiving and benevolent god who seems pretty chill with polytheism. They tie up the orcs and quickly search the bodies, as the pious do, and find a few offerings to the Church of Rexter. They then go looking through the surrounding crates, robbing the poor idiot roadside hobos. So to recap, our group of heroes made the orcs bend the knee to a false idol, then incapacitated them, then robbed them of their earthly possessions. I had a religion joke here, but my wife vetoed it. But all of that pales in comparison to the fact that it turns out that Oscar may be a racist. So there's that. I don't know if you can be a racist if you are yourself not a race, but food for thought. Anyway, off subject, back on point. Rex douses the orcs with water that I assume is holy and cuts them free because with him wanting to become a deity in mind, he gave them a small speech demanding that they leave and go back and stop exploiting and hurting people. They agreed, seemingly being fruitful, and quickly gathered their things and left. This did not sit well with the disciples of Rex, the rest of the party. But in the end, Jorgen and Vibjorn began their long journey back to the dynasty as the group passed them on the cart. There was literally no reason to put those 2 names in there. They were just random orcs, and yet Diane still felt the need to put them in there. I have a feeling just to watch me struggle. Which actually leads me into my next point, transition. It is at this point in the show that out of nowhere and for no reason, the DM puts me and this show on blast. I was flabbergasted, caught completely off guard. I will not stoop to her level with a response, but just know that it was noted. Eventually, needing to find a good spot to camp, they pulled off the road and nestled themselves into the woods. The 2 gnomes, Frizz and Mata, decided to make a gnomish dinner, which probably looks like that pretentious shit that is like this much food on it. Like this much food. Enough to remind you that you're hungry. But they do connect over this task. Frizz and Mata, Frizz asks Mata where she's from, which turns out to be an insanely difficult question, leaving her completely speechless, before almost lying, but deciding to deflect the question. So in addition to a god, this group also has a pretty solid politician. Mata does reveal more about who she really is, telling Frizz she is working for a Logan Talk resistance. Frizz agreed to keep her secret, and it turns out that their wants for a future align more than they thought. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is foreshadowing for some legendary uprising that I'm calling the 3-Foot Wars. Oh, and Mata also tells Frizz that her real name is not Mata. That's a lot of wasted puns on my part. It's actually Lozen. But I guess I can work with that. I'll never stop trying to pun that name, and if she thinks I will, then she's losing her mind. And I can't hear it, but I guarantee you there is a stupid snare on that one. So thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
While all this is happening, Jinx and Rex head off to find herbs, and they have a nice talk and look to have another chance to connect a bit more. This is becoming a pattern at this point, I think, as I previously mentioned. I can almost hear the wedding bells, little ones running around. And that begs the question, what kind of kid is produced between a shifter and a sociopath? Only time will tell. Daffodil scampered away to find a hole in a tree to contemplate the dream she had been having the past few nights and the new powers that she had showed off earlier that day. Dreams of a hellish landscape, souls being devoured, flames, rivers of blood. Terrible things that any person or possum would be scared of. However, in Daffodil's dreams, amongst the terror, she always hears a very beautiful and captivating banjo tune. While Daffodil has this moment of self-reflection inside of her hole, she starts to hear the banjo outside the tree in the forest where she is. It's like she was live on the set of Deliverance. However, the bumpkin outside this tree was a tiefling who sounded a lot like Kiwa. Didn't realize there was a place in hell so similar to West Virginia. Really sheds new light on that John Denver song. He calls himself Drawmar and is described as devilishly handsome, as many West Virginians are. He has dark red skin, swept back black hair, horns curving back, and is presumably missing at least 3 teeth. He was plucking on a banjo, and upon seeing Daffodil climbing out of the tree, greeted her like an old friend. Daffodil learned that Drawmar has been watching her and has been giving her a few of the gifts that she's been using. Mentioned that she will one day be the most famous bard in the entire kingdom, and that he only asks that she use her gifts to captivate the audience and send people his way. Daffodil happily signs and eventually heads back to her friends with her new banjo. And I will say, I am a true West Virginian, so when we start to cosplay all of these characters, I got dibs on Drawmar. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so with everyone back together and enjoying some tiny food, they decide to ignore Daffodil and her new instrument for now. Frizz rallies the group with a speech about being a group and starts to discuss the need for a name. And once again, in naming things this episode, I can't help but feel they missed an opportunity. They're clearly the Misfits. But Daffodil suggests Funholers, which is impressive. I did not think you could come up with something worse than Good Buddies. I thought for sure Rex was going to come up with something a little culty, like the Sunshine Initiative, but instead suggests naming it about their future ambitions. And they eventually land on something pretty simple, Legends, which is not at all pretentious, but it is funny. And that sets a super high bar that I'm sure they'll be limboing under on a fairly consistent basis. So tune in next Monday as they continue their trek towards their first runic stone destination. So that they didn't quite make it there. This was more of a travel episode, and it got interrupted by a fairly extensive battle that they did very well in. So I give everybody a lot of crap, but it was a lot of fun to watch. And the map, if you haven't watched it, the map for that is amazing. So they'll be continuing their trek next week and hopefully get a little bit closer. So that's it for Legends of Shawgal. And now we will, last but not least, certainly dive into Realms of Ugador. I feel like I need to see if I can put like the little logo as I'm talking about each one. I don't know, something to think about. Anyway, we're Realms of Ugador. We're on chapter 15, Shattered Emotions. Wow. We open in a swirling vortex of broken people dealing with traumatic shit they've been avoiding. Multiple mental breakdowns that have me reminiscent of my college years. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. So just to sort of recap the recap here, the Artificer's Tower had come crashing down. Explosions from within, 2 large doors collapse, party frantically escaping, turn around, try to find Carrick, don't see him anywhere. As the 2 doors come crashing down, sending smoke and debris into the air as things begin to settle. In the distance, they can see Carrick running after them, towards them, carrying a body. And it is the body of his fallen father, Ryvon. So that's where we were at the beginning of this episode. So as Carrick places his father down and looks to his friends, asking if everyone had gotten out. The group nodded, and Kiwin approached Carrick. The two said a few words, and Kiwin tried to hug Carrick, which at this point was like hugging an 8-foot emotional porcupine. She then offered to cast Speak with Dead on the still cooling corpse of Carrick's father, which seems too soon or too late. I don't know, it was weird. She does this from a good place, however, and sees it as a chance for Carrick to ask his father some final questions. He agreed, and Kiwin cast a spell, which for most would be like of a necromancy classification, but for Kiwin is more of a charm. Dead Ryvon rises, that's hard to say, with a similar personality, but is at least more forthcoming. They begin to question, or she begins to question, and Carrick got answers, but not the ones he was expecting. He finds out that his mother and sister are actually still alive, and were last seen with Vridka. Also found out that Carrick was taken away from them, and they had searched for him for a long time until Riven was separated from his wife and daughter. So it turns out he wasn't just the type of dad that ran out for cigarettes and just never returned. Wonder what that's like. In his final words, Riven said that he loved Carrick more than anything else in the world, and as those final words left Riven's body, he fell still once again. So let that be a lesson to everyone out there. If you don't express your feelings, you may one day be beat up by the one you love in an ancient tower in the middle of a frigid wasteland, or something like that. With this new information, Carrick thanked Keewin and went into the woods to gather firewood and be alone, as you would. Meanwhile, Nafiko takes on the appearance of light as Eclipse's sister took control to speak with her brother, making this round 2 of dead people communicating with the living, who had crazy family seance on their Ukador bingo card. Anyways, she exclaims that she is very much alive and that he shouldn't be so careless. The two exchanged a lot of words, but eventually go towards some rubble to start searching and just kind of avoid talking. It should be noted that Nafiko does claim that all the people are inside her and a part of her. And we're just going to buy that like it's a normal thing and not at all potentially dangerous. I'm just saying, my uncle did the same thing and now he's like permanently banned from pet stores along the East Coast. So anyways, during this time, Kyriel, presumably feeling excluded because she has no family, turns to her spell book. Ah yes, avoiding social situations by burying your nose in the book. I am sure many of us can relate to that. The group of townsfolk that came to their aid were sifting through the rubble looking for supplies, and survivors. While doing so, they assisted Eclipse and Nafiko, who found a large machine that they inspected. The artificer proving that he's the ultimate nerd by using his connector set to build the D&D Batmobile. Eclipse and Nafiko, unsurprisingly, have no idea what it is, like reading an IKEA catalog without pictures. Turns out it's like a fantasy RV, the Good Buddy Caravan, or GBC for short. That didn't actually happen, but that's headcanon. It was actually later revealed that it was a construct transport for Durgar, who were mining Rosarian. And despite how nice it was, the Durgar were still upset that the artificer didn't just go with the John Deere. Eventually, Keewin spoke with her brother for the first time, who looked and sounded a lot like Roland of old, proving two things. His old self was still in there somewhere, and Solo has not spent a lot of time in the South recently. However, all of that didn't last too long, as the new Roland took form, allowing Solo to use a more natural accent. And as Roland goes back and forth a bit, I did find it a bit odd how chill Keewin was that her brother came out of that tower acting like Smeagol. But as the group reconnected, Carrick was finished setting up the pyre that he had planned to place his father on as a final farewell. Roland asked Carrick permission to help aid him in the ceremony. Carrick nods, and Roland casts a giant spectral hand that raises his father and places him on the pyre. The fire is ignited, and the group watches as the body slowly turns to ash. They stand there, breathing in secondhand Dragonborn, as they watch the chest guard roasting on the open fire, Pyriel's frost nipping at their nose. I told you I wrote this shit late. Once the ceremony is over, Roland kneels down by the fire, saying the last few words. The group gathers their things together and then meets with Orgel, who thanks them for their help with all of this. His men bring several crates to give them as a reward. I've completely lost my place. Okay, so they got the crates as a reward. In the crates, it turns out that there is a bunch of books, papers, and assortment of trinkets. So basically, they were awarded with a solid start to a yard sale. I kid though. After identifying the items, they did manage quite a pull. Looks like the artificer also went to that arcane estate sale. Thanks, Janice. Seriously though, it was a ton of magical items, which sounds super fun until you realize it's like that chest you find in the dungeon before the boss fight. They've just been outfitted by Solo for some fucked up stuff, mark my words. In addition to all of that, they got to keep the new vehicle they had found. They say their final farewells to the survivors and the townsfolk who are heading south back down to Andoria. The group climbs into the machine as Kyriel casts Identify on the machine, learning how to connect with it and operate it. It is decided that she will be driving it, which is probably the best choice, as she is probably the only one not currently under the influence or in a dark state of mind, or is Kiwin, who would have assuredly resulted in Ukador's first vehicular accident. They all settle in and begin their journey to Glim's brother to finish the quest that they had originally set out upon. Upon arriving at his home, they were invited in for some hot brown morning potion, which, let's be honest, sounds like something you get after a night of tacos. They exchanged pleasantries, discussed Pyriel and the rhyme, dropped off the goods, received payments, and eventually bid farewell to their new friend Clark. Jumping back in the new vehicle, the group traveled towards the city of Andoria to meet back up with Argyle. So that is where we are with that. They have completed that mission that they started 3 episodes ago or so. And so they are headed back to Andoria to presumably start either finishing up whatever mess that the Artificer had started, or I don't know, it's hard to tell what else may be in store. So, but whatever it is, they are completely outfitted for it at this point. So I believe that is it. We are all caught up on the campaigns there. And so we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back with our guests. Go ahead and enter raffle into the chat for our mid-show giveaway, and we will see you in 5.